Chapter 71 Storage Ring, got it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the way to Guchenfang City, Chen Mo walked in front with his hands behind his back, and Mei Hua followed closely behind. 2 years ago, this boy at the number 1, 2, and 3 grain station might not have given face to any Ling Jifu at all, but now. We must do everything we can to take good care of the low-status but high-status casual cultivator in front of us. Now, if the other party doesn't tell where so much grain comes from, then he won't ask again and again without knowing it. I believe that when he arrives at the grain station, the other party will still answer his doubts. After spending half an hour, the two finally arrived at Fengshe. We walked all the way through Qingshiban Street and finally stopped at the entrance of the number 1, 2, and 3 grain station. At this time in the past, Song Yunshi would not stay in the shop at all. Firstly, there would be no business, and secondly, it would delay his practice. If it hadn't been for Mei Hua's notification and Chen Mo's visit, he wouldn't have been able to stay here. Seeing his little brother from a distance, Song Yunshi took the initiative to greet him and gave him the most direct hug among men. Long time no see. You didn't even come to see me this month. Chen Mo said with a smile, there are many things in the field, so it is quite busy. The three of them walked into the house and installed the door. Song Yunshi looked at Mei Hua behind him and asked, ask him to come with you with the storage ring. What's the matter? Mei Hua glanced at Chen Mo again, and after the other party nodded, he took 7 or 8 steps back until a large space was cleared, and then he started to pick up the grain bags one by one, 1 bag, 2 bags, 3 bags. At first, Song Yunshi was calm about the matter of a few bags of grain. With the ability of his little brother, he believed that it was normal to save a few hundred kilograms. It seems that the spiritual sand has been used up, and they have to sell food to exchange for the spiritual sand. For a moment, he also recalled the trip to Wenxiang Pavilion more than a month ago, which cost the other party more than 20 taels of spiritual sand. If I had known Brother Chen was in such a tight situation, would have drank less wine. However, when Mei Hua carried out more than 10 bags of grain, Song Yunshi was stunned. He turned to look at Chen Mo and asked, how much does 1 bag weigh? Visually, it should be around 200 pounds, after all, that's what he does. 200. It's really 200 pounds. Song Yunshi was extremely surprised. The look in Chen Mo's eyes became unnatural. However, he can accept and understand 2,000 pounds. Just when he thought there wouldn't be more, Mei Hua actually brought out 10 more bags. Now, he is no longer calm. Not only that, judging from the actions of the waiter in his store, he showed no intention of stopping. Etc. Song Yunshi shouted loudly, and Mei Hua stopped moving. How much? He has seen several thousand kilograms or tens of thousands of kilograms of grain, but it was collected from dozens of spiritual planters. Now, one person brought so much food, it was hard for him to accept it for a while. 30 bags in total. Chen Mo calmly said a number. 30. Song Yunshi's eyes widened. This expression is exactly the same as that of Mei Hua when she saw Liang just now. On the other side, the waiter piled 6,000 kilograms of grain into a hill. At this time, Song Yunshi, who was dumbfounded just now, suddenly calmed down all his expressions and almost became serious. It's 6,000 kilograms. Brother Chen, are you going to exchange it for 600 taels of spiritual sand or 6 pieces of low-grade spiritual stones? Chen Mo was a little surprised by the other party's sudden change of face, but he still prepared his words. Brother Song, this year I contracted 10 more acres of spiritual land. Where did it come from? There was a man named Xiao next door who disappeared when winter came last year. Later, Niujia shop sent someone to discuss the contracting of the spiritual field. I saw that they would waive the rent this year, so I contracted it. If it were any other Lingzifu, Song Yunshi might have asked, are you crazy? But in front of him was Chen Mo. However, the charred corpse soon appeared in his mind. In the past few days, when I took over his spiritual field, I discovered a big pit behind the house. There was a lot of grain buried in the pit, and that's it. He saved so much. Next, Chen Mo explained how Xiao Zhonghua encouraged Wang Lixia to go to the Immortal Cave, and then occupied the other party's spiritual field. In the end, the grain was pushed to Wang Lixia's head. After all, the other party has been planting this his whole life. Although unrealistic, it is not impossible. After Song Yunshi listened, he nodded with deep understanding, and then asked Mei Hua to weigh the grains. After opening 2 more bags at will, I checked them. After confirming that the numbers were correct, he happily took 6 low-grade spiritual stones and handed them over. Brothers, settle accounts clearly, at this time, as much as you need. Brother Chen, last year I said I would borrow the spiritual stone to buy exercises. I didn't expect you to be so lucky this year, and you ended up picking up so much food for nothing. Luck. Chen Mo laughed. Haha, this matter simply does not bear scrutiny, but all he wanted was a story. Let's go. I will take you to Yunyu bookstore now. Song Yunshi waved his sleeves and strode away. Mei Hua very wisely took the initiative to open the shop door and send the 2 of them off respectfully. However, Chen Mo stopped where he was, shook his head and said, Brother Song, I don't want to buy the technique for the time being. Song Yunshi turned around and asked with a frown, you are only at the 3rd level of qi refining now, so you only consume 1 low-grade spirit stone a year, right? 1.5 to be exact. I remember you still have 1, which is enough. Song Yunshi also meant well. If Chen Mo wants to go further, he must replace the Yangqi Ju, otherwise he will face great resistance when he reaches the 4th level of qi refining. Brother Song, I will buy the skills, but not now. I want to buy something else. Something else? Yes. Spells? Magical instruments? Or? Song Yunshi suddenly thought of an item, which should be the most urgent and most needed thing besides the skills. Storage ring. Chen Mo smiled and nodded. That's right. The skills can wait for another year, but the storage ring can't wait any longer. At the end of the year, when he harvests the 2nd crop of spiritual rice, even if he puts aside the 3,000 kilograms of grain tax, there will be 3,000 kilograms left. In addition, by the next year, his rainmaking skills will also be perfected. By then, the talent for increasing production will be further improved, and the annual harvest of grain will be even more. At that time, he can't push a small cart and run to the market again and again, right? Therefore, the storage ring is the most urgent item Chen Mo needs now. Song Yunshi nodded and said, storage rings are not sold in Guchen Market. Such precious things must be purchased at Xian Peak. Generally, the most common storage ring costs 5 low-grade spirit stones, and the space is about 20 feet square. If converted into spirit rice, it can store about 20,000 kilograms. How about this? I will go to Xian Peak tomorrow, and you can come to pick it up 3 days later. How about it? Thank you, shopkeeper Song. Chapter 72 Next Steps. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Mo left. Only Song Yunshi and Mei Hua were left in the 123rd grain station. As the manager of the grain store, Mei Hua naturally knew what to ask and what not to ask. At this moment, even though he had a lot of doubts in his heart, he chose to turn a blind eye, until Song Yunshi took the initiative to speak. Do you believe what he said? Mei Hua looked at his shopkeeper, thought for a moment, and shook his head. Oh. Why not? At this time, he walked forward and casually took out a handful of spiritual rice from a bag of grain, saying, these are all new rice, which should have been harvested within a year. The 123rd grain station is in this business, and new rice and old rice can naturally be easily distinguished, otherwise this business would be in vain. Song Yunshi nodded, but a bitter smile appeared on his face. Shopkeeper, what are you doing? My brother is both accepting my favor and commanding my army. I understand accepting favors, but what about commanding my army? Mei Hua was a little confused. Song Yunshi didn't say anything more, but he vaguely guessed the origin of these grains. Unexpectedly, the other party also started the business of robbery. No wonder. No wonder. No wonder he could kill people and destroy corpses so calmly at the beginning. After all, plunder is always the fastest way to get rich. Now, he directly sold 6,000 kilograms of spiritual rice to the 123 grain station, instead of secretly handling it in batches and stores. This is to make Song Yunshi express his attitude. Chen Mo didn't expect that his helpless move would trigger so much deep thinking. he also knew that these 6,000 kilograms of spiritual rice were too incredible, but this was also an attempt to test whether Song Yunshi of the 123 grain station was worth making friends with. Obviously, the other party was a smart man. Back home, Chen Mo combed the feathers of the 4 spiritual birds as usual. Now, their egg yolk-colored fluff has completely faded, and they are gradually showing signs of maturity. The most important thing is that their size has almost doubled. It has reached Chen Mo's knees. There are growth factors involved, but the most important thing is the talent bonus of strongness. After relaxing the meridians and activating the collaterals, after more than 4 months, his activating collaterals technique has become proficient, and the 20% individual increase has also been reflected in the 4 spirit chickens. Of course, the change is still the spirit chicken that is always extremely excited except for sleeping Xiao Kang. Its fur color is more transparent, even if it is mixed in the chicken flock. You can see its difference at a glance. Sure enough, the free-range chickens that eat a lot and eat well have the best fur and meat. On the 4th day, Chen Mo arrived as promised. Song Yunshi had returned from Xian Peak last night and waited here early. The two entered the inner room, and with the bright sunlight, an ancient bronze ring appeared in front of Chen Mo. Is this a storage ring? Yes, 3 years. A full 3 years. 3 years ago, when Chen Mo first came into contact with the storage ring, he had been thinking about it, and 3 years had passed before he actually got this ring. He carefully picked it up from the table and put it on his index finger. The originally large ring suddenly shrank by itself and just fit on his finger. Brother Song, how do you use this? Below the Jindan stage, all magic tools have only one way to recognize their master. Drop blood? Yes. Before the foundation building, the cultivator has no spiritual consciousness, so naturally he can only rely on the most primitive means. Hearing this, Chen Mo picked up the sharp blade prepared on the table and gently cut his finger. When the blood dripped on the ring, the sense of control came instantly. He thought about it and immediately saw its storage space. As Song Yunshi said, it was about 20 feet square. It was basically the size of an ordinary bedroom. No one needed to teach. Chen Mo quickly mastered the way to store and take things. He stroked this simple ring and was in a good mood. How is it? No need to push the cart anymore. Song Yunshi was stunned, then laughed. Unexpectedly, the other party's first reaction was to stop pushing the cart. Brother Chen. This is a low-grade spiritual stone. He handed over the last spiritual stone. Thank you. Song Yunshi stood there, hesitated for a moment, and finally said, Brother Chen, I think I have to tell you after thinking about it. Chen Mo remained calm, but his heart skipped a beat. Please tell me. If you walk along the river often, you will get your feet wet. It's safer to keep your feet on the ground. Chen Mo didn't understand at first, but after a moment, he understood. It seems that the other party attributed the origin of the 6,000 kilograms of spiritual rice to looting. However, last year was a disaster year. Where did he get so much food for him to rob? Remember, that without explanation or words, Chen Mo said goodbye to Song Yunshi and returned to his own 1/3 acre of land. Back in the house, he piled all his belongings on the ground: 150 jin of Linghuang rice, more than 3 jin of Xuaniling rice, a handful of mysterious seeds, 13 biga pills, dozens of jin of aphid corpses and rice husks, and finally 2 spiritual stones. This is all his belongings. It doesn't look like much, but it is a wealth that other spiritual plant husbands can never have in their lifetime. The small wooden house, which was originally full of things, was finally cleaned up. Now, no matter what he needs, he can take it out at any time as long as he thinks about it, which is very convenient. In the next few days, relying on the convenience of the storage ring, he went to the forest in the mountains, cut some trees and built a fence around the cabin. Every day during the day, the spirit birds were raised in the fence and driven back to the house at night. However, Chen Mo also knew that this was not a long-term solution. Other spirit-raising officials who raised spirit birds all found spirit formation masters to set up defensive formations to prevent evil spirits from stealing these spirit chickens and spirit ducks that they had raised for a long time in the dark night. He also asked, and the price was not expensive, basically between 10 taels and 20 taels. which is also the subsidy price of the market. After all, the final profit of raising spirit birds still falls into the pocket of Xian Peak. The reason why Chen Mo has not taken any action is that his breeding scale is not large enough, and secondly, he is ready to wait until the end of the year to harvest a sum of spirit stones and spirit sands, and then make an overall transformation. A small cabin, the space is still a bit too small. In the photo formation, the newly sown spiritual yellow rice has not yet begun to sprout, but the surrounding weeds have no competition due to the harvest of spiritual rice. It is midsummer and they are growing wildly. This also causes Chen Mo to spend some time every day to clean up the weeds. The cost of ripening. There will always be some ups and downs in 2 seasons a year, however, these ups and downs are still acceptable. At the foot of Xian Peak, where Huangyan Peak borders, a figure cuts through the sky and flies from the horizon. The monks who were originally talking and laughing suddenly fell silent and looked at the newcomer, after seeing clearly. Everyone knelt on one knee and said in unison, "Greetings to Master Li." Chapter 73 The Shocking Change in Front of the Immortal Cave. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Shangxian also saw the arrival of the Peak Master in person. He rushed to Li Chunfeng as quickly as possible. Unlike others who knelt on one knee, he only clasped his hands together and said, "Master. How is the secret realm?" "Master, in more than a month, a total of 400 batches of more than 400 cultivators of the 3rd level of qi refining have entered. Now the tearing force at the entrance is getting stronger and stronger." Li Shangxian pointed to the cliff not far away and flew over with the Peak Master. From the time Li Chunfeng arrived to the time he left, the masters of the workshops never stood up, but the Peak Master of Xian Peak didn't even look at them. The workshop owners may have some power in their own areas, but they are far from his eyes. Even the entire income of these 34 workshops is managed by the elders, and these cultivators who have the hope of golden elixir naturally devote themselves to cultivation, and worldly affairs will only distract them. "Master, here." Li Shangxian stood beside the cliff, and below him was a group of spirit plant husbands huddled and shivering. Now, there was no life on their faces, and the fear of death had long spread in their hearts. What awaited them was only early or late death. You, and you, go in." Li Shangxian randomly pointed at 3 people, and after a shiver, one of the 3 people who were pointed suddenly burst into tears. The next moment, regardless of the situation in front of him, he turned around and ran. Run. But can he run away? Even without Li Chunfeng doing anything, just one finger, a good head was pierced. "You go." Killing people is like slaughtering dogs, which can't arouse anyone's pity. They are already dead in sorrow. The 3 spirit plant husbands who were pointed out came to the cliff like zombies. Just when they were about to enter, dozens of lightning flashes appeared out of thin air from the cliff. In an instant, the 3 spirit plant husbands at the 3rd level of qi refining were instantly pierced like paper. However, the lightning continued, and human figures appeared. More than a dozen obviously more powerful evil spirits rushed straight towards Li Chunfeng. The powerful aura even frightened Li Shangxian who was standing by. These are no longer ordinary evil spirits. The aura they exude is far more than that of the qi training realm. Li Chunfeng frowned, and his eyes revealed a cold light. He put his fingers together to form a sword and rushed into the enemy formation in an instant, fighting with the evil spirits that flashed in the secret realm. The battle of the foundation building realm is not something that a disciple like Li Shangxian can participate in. He could only retreat far away, looking at the battlefield not far away with fear. Suddenly, an evil spirit left the battlefield and headed straight for him. Li Shangxian didn't even have time to think before he ran to the middle of the monks. In a flash, he made the most correct decision. Sure enough, after the evil spirits were diverted, the target of the evil spirits also changed. Countless spells and talismans attacked instantly, delaying the movements of the evil spirits. For these monsters, they don't know any spells at all, and they can only rely on their strong bodies. However, in the face of countless spell attacks, no matter how strong the body is, it can't withstand the destruction of concentrated fire. After just a few breaths, this evil spirit that is comparable to the foundation building fell from the sky, and it was obvious that it was dead. Just when the abbey owners breathed a sigh of relief, a lightning-like figure had rushed into the crowd without knowing when, and under the terrifying claws, it instantly took away 3 abbey owners who were not careful. Their robes and bodies were like tofu under the claws of the evil spirits, and were easily cut open. There was no time to react at all. Quick! Attack quickly. However, although their spells were strong, their physical reactions could not keep up with the evil spirits. In just a few breaths, several abbey owners were thrown open and their heads were cut off, and they were obviously dead. Just when everyone was in despair, the flying sword under Li Chuanfeng's feet came and pierced the evil spirits in the blink of an eye. The frightened monks gasped heavily, their eyes wandering around, fearing that other evil spirits would tear through their defenses. Finally, after a fight, Li Chunfeng solved these more than 10 powerful evil spirits, and he also looked at the bare cliffs with a solemn expression. Why did such a powerful evil spirit appear as soon as he arrived? Li Chunfeng knew very well that if it weren't for him, those monsters would have slaughtered all the monks here, leaving no one behind. But a few months ago, there was always peace here. Only after he appeared, so many powerful monsters appeared. Let them continue. Li Chunfeng thought for a moment, threw down a sentence, and left again. From beginning to end, he didn't care about even a dead monk. Li Shangxian took a deep breath and probably guessed the reason. The secret realm seemed to have a means of examining the outside world. For the monks in the Qi refining realm, they would only show the evil spirits in the Qi refining realm. Once the foundation building cultivators approach, there will be enemies to match them. On the other side, the 22 shop owners have just recovered from their shock. They paid the price of 12 lives in just one attack. If Li Chunfeng hadn't taken action in the end, I'm afraid there wouldn't be a single one left. The shop owners who were originally watching the fun, or wanted to get a share of the pie after the secret realm was opened, bowed their hands and clasped their fists, without even saying goodbye, and immediately turned around and ran away. Among them, Niu Yuliang from Guchen Market ran the fastest. Another day passed. After a whole day of hard training, the experience bar of the 3rd level of Qi refining finally grew a little longer. Chen Mo opened the panel. Name, Chen Mo. Occupation, spiritual plant husband, unlocked. Spiritual cultivator, unlocked. Spiritual fisherman, unlocked. Lifespan, 32 out of 80. Cultivation, 3rd level of Qi refining. Skill, nourishing Qi Ju, 62/300. Spiritual root. Golden spiritual root, 1st level 73/100. Spell rainmaking technique. Minor success 289/800. Air crossing technique, minor 33 out of 800. Active art, proficient 31 out of 200. Flame palm, minor 454/800. Genjin finger, great 1 out of 1600. Snake body skill, mastery 327/400. Talent. Spiritual plant husband, increase production, purple, breeding, purple, ripening, green. Spiritual nurturing officer, strong, green. Each spell has been improved to a certain extent. The rainmaking spell will take the next year to be fully developed, and the air transfer spell will be around the same time if luck is good. As for the newly learned active art, it is not impossible to improve the realm earlier, but like the rainmaking spell, the more time you spend on the spell, the less time you spend on the practice. Chen Mo's day only has 12 hours. He must balance the relationship between the practice and the spell. It seems that I will have to wait until next year to break through the Yangqi Ju. As a result, Chen Mo plans not to buy the 3 low-grade spirit stones at the end of the year for the time being. He must first consider how to further improve the efficiency of planting and breeding. Begging for a follow-up reading tomorrow Tuesday. This is the last round of recommendations. I hope it can be included. Strive to be on the shelves in December. Chapter 74. Xiao Kang is thirsty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stop. Chen Mo, who was sitting cross-legged and practicing with his eyes closed, suddenly shot out a golden finger, hitting the spirit bird right in front of him. Xiao Kang, who was spinning around him and running wildly, suddenly stopped and looked at him with his head raised, a very angry expression on his face. You still have the nerve to be angry. Another 3 months passed. Today, the 4 spiritual chickens have grown to half a person's height. After combing and massaging his hair continuously for more than half a year, Chen Mo's Huiqiu technique successfully broke through to the mastery level, and the increase in talent, strongness, also increased from 20% to 50%, in just 1 year. The size of these 4 spiritual birds has reached the standard of being raised for more than 2.5 years. If you take it to the market and sell it, you can instantly double it and exchange it for 40 taels of spiritual sand. However, Chen Mo doesn't plan to sell them now. After all, they can grow longer, and when they reach a person's chest, they can be sold at a better price. As for Xiao Kang, who had just been stopped, his appearance was even more outstanding now. The shiny black feathers and explosive power all over his body give people a spiritual and powerful feeling. Chen Mo estimated that, not to mention the other 3 spiritual chickens, they fit the criteria of chickens very well. But this one has a certain strength. I'm afraid that the average martial arts master is no match for it. Of course, it is far from the first level of chi refining. After all, it is a spiritual bird, and the monster blood in its body is already very thin. Whether it is to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on one's own, or to rely on bloodline to awaken, the possibility of becoming an immortal and an ancestor is very weak. Chuck, cluck. Xiao Kang stood there, his 2 chicken feet still stepping. It seemed like he couldn't stop at all. I told you to sneak them away. Why are you walking around me? Chen Mo was so angry that he pressed the opponent's chicken neck and took a lot of effort to lift it up. These days, the lingwang rice in the fields has basically grown. Things like rain spreading, weeding, and insect control are almost done, and Chen Mo only needs to wait quietly for the ears of rice to grow. During this period, I can just concentrate on practicing. With 2 low-grade spiritual stones in hand, I can strive to break through the 4th level of chi refining as soon as possible. But Xiao Kang was not good at it, and kept circling him, which made him upset, so he gave it a lesson with Gingjin's finger. Gur. Gurgle. Xiao Kang turned his head and looked behind him, and Chen Mo followed his gaze. The other 3 spiritual birds are now wandering aimlessly. You mean they move too slowly? It won't take much to sneak them away, Chen Mo asked, and then Xiao Kang nodded his chicken head. Then don't walk around in front of me. After saying that, he let go of his hand. The next moment, Xiao Kang disappeared in the blink of an eye. A shadow of wind flashed by, and a moment later the other 3 spiritual chickens were pecked to pieces. They were moving slowly just now, but now they started running after Xiao Kang. Of course, the speed is much worse. Remember, you are the chicken herder now. Chen Mo shouted at Xiao Kang, who was not far away. Then a sound of breaking wind came, and the other party had already arrived beside him. He raised his head and looked proud. Okay. I remember. I'll buy 10 or 8 pullets next year. That I don't know whether it was luck or whether there were only roosters in that cage, but I didn't expect that the 4 spiritual birds, including Xiao Kang, were all male. This also resulted in it having no energy and nowhere to vent it at this moment. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why it revolves around Chen Mo. 1 person and 1 chicken were chatting, and suddenly Xiao Kang shouted towards the position due north, and then rushed out of the photo array with lightning speed, facing the spiritual chicken that suddenly jumped out. Miao Chen and He Jiping stopped immediately. This chicken was raised by Chen Mo, and no matter how brave he was, he didn't dare to touch its evil intentions. Well, I'm here to see your master. Miao Chen asked cautiously. Kick kick. Kick kick. Xiao Kang pecked the ground, and then turned his head away with a look of disdain. It seems to say that he is not free. But after a moment, Chen Mo appeared from behind them. What's the matter? He said, kicking Xiao Kang away, and muttered, let's go play. Behind him, He Jiping squeezed his hands, and Miao Chen hesitated. Just as Chen Mo frowned, the latter still spoke. Chen. Fellow Taoist Chen, I see that the spiritual rice in this field doesn't seem to have too many ears. Chen Mo glanced behind him. The land of the 2 of them, including Lan Ling, is already golden, and the harvest this year will definitely not be bad. However, once the 2 years of grain taxes are paid, their work for a year will naturally be in vain. The purpose of coming to him now is obvious. I was willing to spend twice the price to buy seeds from him because I was hoping for a good harvest next year. But since this year, the performance of these 2 people has been average, and Chen Mo has no intention of helping them increase production. Let's go. I'll take you to find the shopkeeper of the number 1, 2, and 3 grain stations. He said, as if he was going to come to find trouble. You can deceive people by opening a grain station. The shopkeeper is at the 7th level of chi refining and he can deceive our souls. Shame. Can my uncle cheat the peasants? Let's go together and let him pay back our losses. As he spoke, he pulled their clothes and left. But He Jiping and Miao Chen, how dare they? Putting aside the connections behind the grain station manager, their status as the 7th level chi refiner alone is not something they can cause trouble for. If they really want to go to the door to ask for punishment, it would be like the birthday god hanging himself. He thinks his life is too long. Ah! Forget it, just, leave it like this. Originally, the two just wanted to get back the extra spiritual sand from Chen Mo, but after all this trouble, how dare they do it? Nodding and bowing, they hurried away. Crack! Crackle! Crackle! Xiao Kang, who was running on the side, stopped. With a smug expression. Chen Mo kicked it and cursed. What does it have to do with you? After a small episode, he walked into the photo formation again. From the outside, although it was all golden, the rice ears on each plant were no different from those in other fields, but once you get closer, it's a completely different scene. The plump grains were huddled together, and the heavy rice grains even bent the rice seedlings. These days, he deliberately slowed down the practice of the rainmaking technique for this reason. The 100% increase in yield has already made the stems of the spiritual yellow rice a little overwhelmed. Once the rainmaking technique is perfected, the talent, yield increase, will be further improved. I am afraid that it will completely crush the spiritual rice before it matures. Chen Mo had never farmed in his previous life, but he also knew that once the rice fell over, there might be no harvest. However, he didn't take this matter to heart. Now, he still continues to practice and break through the 4th level of chi refining as soon as possible to see what new talents he will awaken. He has unlocked 2 professions, and maybe he can awaken 2 talents at once when he reaches the next level. Chapter 75 Another Harvest Season, please read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Golden October, in the photo-keeping formation, Chen Mo has been busy. This time, Xiao Kang and the other 3 spiritual birds were kept in the wooden house to prevent them from eating all the spiritual rice scattered on the ground. Of course, the most important thing is to prevent Xiao Kang. One chicken can eat several times more than the other 3. Chen Mo is now very familiar with harvesting spiritual rice, and his movements are very smooth. However, one person's strength is limited after all. No matter how fast he moves, it took him a day to harvest all the spiritual rice in the field. It will take another 1 or 2 days to knock the spiritual rice off the rice ears. The problem is back. Now, 15 acres of spiritual fields are not bad. 3 days is 3 days, and it won't delay too much practice, but Chen Mo also knows that as his realm improves, he must find a way to get himself out of the affairs of farming. He only needs to be responsible for raining, increasing production, and the rest should be left to other people. After thinking about it, it is definitely impossible to hire someone. His special features should not be exposed now. In this way, the purchase of an agricultural puppet is also on the agenda. However, in the past 4 years, Chen Mo has gone to Guchen Market 7 or 8 times, and has never seen a store selling puppets. In other words, there may not be any in Xian Peak. After harvesting 15 acres of spiritual fields, Chen Mo straightened his back. In the next day and a half, he bagged and stacked the spiritual rice, which was still 6,000 caddies as half a year ago. The grain tax for 2 years is 200 caddies per mu, and 15 mu is 3,000 caddies. Chen Mo deposited the remaining 3,000 caddies into the storage ring, and the rest was piled in the outer corner of the cabin, waiting for the grain collector to come. The straw in the field was still the same as usual. After burning it with a fire, it was scattered back to the field. After doing all this, Chen Mo took advantage of the dusk to remove the Wangshan Luiying formation and let everything return to normal. After waiting for 2 more days, the grain collector finally came. However, only 2 people came this time. One was the female cultivator who was called Xiao at the beginning, and the other was a new face. As for the owner of Guchen Market, Niu Yuliang, for some reason, he did not show up this time. The two seemed to be in a bad mood. After asking a few simple questions, they directly took away all the spiritual rice harvested by the surrounding spiritual farmers, and even some broken rice. Chen Mo still remembered that 2 years ago, this female cultivator once said, within 2 years, as long as he practiced the flame palm to a small success, the other party would accept him as a disciple. Now, this spell has long been a small success. And when they met again, the other party did not even mention it. Perhaps he had long forgotten about it. Of course, Chen Mo would never worship the other party as his master. As soon as the grain collector left, the spiritual fields around Guchen Market fell into desolation again. The harvest did not bring joy, but only sighs. Once the insect disaster, 2 years of work was in vain. The spiritual planters could only grit their teeth and endure for another year. Of course, compared to the spiritual planters at the 3rd and 4th levels of qi refining, those who stayed in the fields were already lucky. If the harvest was gone, they could still plant again, but if their lives were gone, they were really gone. Chen Mo also found out that the spiritual fields left by the recruited monks were not left barren. This time, Xian Peak and Guchen Market personally took action and summoned a group of people to temporarily serve as spiritual planters. As for next year, I'm afraid the fields will have to be redistributed again. The day after the grain collector left, Chen Mo set off early in the morning and came to Guchen Market. As usual, the first stop was the 123rd grain station. However, what he didn't expect was that this grain store, which had been open all year round, was closed today. There was even a note on the door. Chen Mo went up and took a look. Temporarily closed due to important matters. These 5 simple words made him frown. What Song Yinshi called important matters must be something trivial. After hesitating for a moment, Chen Mo still knocked on the door with his backhand, but after knocking for a long time, there was no movement. Just as he turned around and prepared to leave, he heard the sound of the door opening behind him. Chen Daoyu? Chen Mo turned around and saw Mei Hua, the manager of the grain station. Where is Brother Song? Why is it closed? The other party looked around, then called him in, lit the candle, closed the door, and then explained. Manager Song knew you would come, so he asked me to stay here. He has something to do. Mei Hua nodded, yes. What is it? Is it important? The other party shook his head. I don't know, he didn't tell me anything. Mei Hua thought for a while and continued. About 3 months ago, he suddenly came to me and told me that he had something important to do and asked me to stay here. During this period, the grain station would not be open for business on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd days. Everything will be discussed after he comes back. Chen Mo frowned. At this time, the other party took out a sachet from his pocket and handed it over. Friend Chen Daoyu, before Manager Song left, he specifically told me that he would give it to you when you come. What's inside? I didn't look at it. Mei Hua shook his head. Mei Hua is not stupid to be able to hand over a shop to him. Chen Mo took it and rubbed it gently. It should be a note. He didn't pretend. Since the other party said he didn't look at it, there was no need for him to hide it, so he directly opened the sachet and took out the note. It is written in Juanxiu block letters. Brother Chen, Mr. Song has something important to leave temporarily. This matter is of great importance and he has to go. The time has not yet been determined. It can be as short as half a year or as long as 2 years. I hope you can forgive me. There wasn't much in the note, it was just a greeting to Chen Mo. However, even so, he could feel the sincerity of the other party, and he was still thinking about him before leaving. This big brother is indeed a nice person. Brother Song, did you tell you how long you would be away for? Mei Hua shook her head. I didn't say. Chen Mo handed over the note. He said it could be as short as 1 year or as long as 2 years. Mei Hua was surprised. He didn't expect that the other party would show him the contents of the note. What is the shopkeeper doing here? He's so mysterious. Don't think about it, let's wait. Chen Mo clasped his fists and continued, I hope we will let you know when the time comes. Definitely, definitely. When shopkeeper Song comes back, I will come to your door immediately to invite you. Thank you. Song Yinshi's departure was indeed somewhat beyond Chen Mo's expectation, but this is also human nature. Except for Ling Jifu's resettlement, businessmen would be traveling abroad, and it was normal not to come back for a while. without Song Yunshi, the breeding issue could only be put on hold. Chen Mo randomly found 3 grain shops, took the grain out of the storage ring in advance, and sold 700 kilograms of spiritual rice each. The remaining 900 kilograms were pushed to Nyo's shop. By pushing 700 kilograms, having a storage ring really saves you a lot of trouble. Otherwise, pushing this 3,000 kilograms of spiritual rice through the city would probably cause a sensation. When he arrived at Nyojia's shop, Wei Wuwei looked very surprised when he saw Chen Mo. Chapter 76 Meeting an Old Friend Again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Why are you here? The harvest is better this year, and there is still some grain left. More. Wei Wuwei was a little surprised. 15 acres of spiritual fields, the grain tax alone can empty a spiritual farmer. Unexpectedly, the other party actually has surplus grain. But a cart of grain is placed in front of him, and he can't refuse it. How much in total? Wei Wuwei asked. 700 kilograms, a little left over per acre. Having said that, Wei Wuwei laughed and stepped forward to pat Chen Mo's shoulder, as if all the barriers and haze did not exist at all. Look, look. I told you, it will definitely not hurt to contract more spiritual fields. It is absolutely not a problem to harvest an extra 30 or 50 kilograms per acre. Thank you, Manager Wei. Chen Mo clasped his hands and bowed. Come on, I will pay you the spiritual sand after I finish weighing it here. Wei Wuwei didn't expect that the boy in front of him was actually a good farmer. He was really surprised that 1 acre of spiritual field could harvest about 250 kilograms of spiritual rice, which really surprised him. Of course, for grain stations like them, they naturally hope that there will be more and more spiritual plant husbands. Who doesn't hope to earn more? Especially in such a disaster year. The two of them exchanged a few words in a fake manner, and soon Chen Mo got another 70 taels of spiritual sand from the Nyo family shop. At this time, he told the real purpose of this trip. Manager Wei, I raised 4 spiritual birds last year, which is considered to be a stepping stone. This year I want to expand the scale of breeding. Oh. Raising spiritual birds. Good. Good. Wei Wuwei was delighted. It turned out that those who are capable should do more work. Then I wonder if Manager Wei can introduce me. I want to build a chicken shed around my residence. As soon as this was said, the other party reacted instantly. Do you want to set up a defensive spiritual array? If there is no protection against evil spirits, I am afraid they will all die in one night. Wei Wuwei nodded. This is also a regular demand. It is normal for the spiritual plant husband to pay and the spiritual array master to set up the array. The other spiritual breeding officials also did this. Okay. Then you wait for me for a few days, and then I will directly invite the spirit formation master over. How about that? As he said that, Chen Mo took out 10 taels of spirit sand and stuffed it into the other party's hand. Thank you, shopkeeper Wei. After seeing him push the cart away, Wei Wuwei looked at the spirit sand in his hand, and then looked at his back, and for a moment it seemed a little unreal. After a moment, he seemed to have a little understanding. He raised his mouth, chuckled, and said to himself, it seems that he doesn't care about the 10 taels of spirit sand. With a huge sum of 300 taels of spirit sand in his pocket, Chen Mo wandered around the Guchen market. He went to the shop where he bought the blue python robe, and originally planned to buy a magic weapon. But after seeing the price and efficacy, he temporarily gave up. He originally planned to go to Yinyu bookstore again, but he met an acquaintance on the way. That's right. It was the vendor who sold him the mysterious seeds 2 years ago. When Chen Mo saw the other party enter the Wenxiang pavilion, he thought for a moment and followed him in. Hong Yan, who was greeting him outside the door, greeted him with a smile when she saw him coming. Chen Daoyu, long time no see. I thought you disliked us. Looking at the other party's smile, Chen Mo laughed at himself. I'm just a farmer, how can I come here often? No way. Hong Yan pretended to be unhappy. Do you know that person just now? Who? The one in the green robe, with long hair and a mustache. Hong Yan looked inside and finally saw Yi Tingxing sitting on a bench drinking sake. Him. A casual cultivator who loves adventure, he is also a regular customer here. He comes here every once in a while, and every time he comes, he will look for Xiao. Are you looking for him? Chen Mo nodded and said, I'll go in and take a look. The same rules. Let's have a pot of Xianren Peak first. Sister Hong is busy, so let Yushi come to accompany her for a while. Okay. Hong Yen smiled so hard that her eyes narrowed. There has been no business for too long, and Wenxiang Pavilion is a little bit struggling to make ends meet. Chen Mo stepped into the atrium hall and went straight to Yi Tingsheng's table. Regardless of the other party's surprised look, he directly pulled out a bench and sat down. Xiao, who was talking and laughing on the side, was slightly stunned, then looked at him and said, Do you know him? Yi Tingsheng looked at Chen Mo and seemed to have no impression. Who are you? I bought some seeds and planted them in the ground. They originally produced some fruits, but they all rotted in the ground before they could be picked. In addition, the land and the surrounding area became exhausted of spiritual energy, and spiritual rice could no longer be planted. Seeing the other party talking, Yi Tingsheng's face became redder and redder. Unexpectedly, this is the victim who came to the door. He vaguely remembered that the other party seemed to have bought seeds from him, but how could he admit it? How could he spit back the spiritual sand he got? Dao Yu, you recognized the wrong person. As he spoke, Hong Yen came over with a pot of Xianrenfeng. Xiao Er, who was standing by, stood up and bowed to her, Sister Hong. Oh, you two are friends. Come on, Dao Yu Chen and I are both your beauties. Dao Yu, I will buy you this pot of sake today. As he spoke, he took the initiative to fill Yi Tingsheng's cup. At this moment, this casual cultivator who had been adventuring outside for many years showed a strange look in his eyes. He vaguely remembered that the other party was a spiritual plant husband. It was unexpected that Lingzifu could enter Wenxiang Pavilion, but it was unexpected that even Hong Yen, the manager of Wenxiang Pavilion, gave him some face. What is the identity of this person? Don't worry, fellow Taoist, I'm not here to ask you for spiritual sand. Chen Mo smiled slightly. I wonder what your name is? Yi Tingsheng. You and I are destined to be together, why don't we make friends? Yi Tingsheng was a little hesitant. The Lingzifu in front of him was a little strange. He didn't know what his purpose was in chatting up him. I've been running around outside all year round, my head is tied to my belt, and I don't know when I will lose my life. I think I'd better forget it. The other party's refusal did not surprise Chen Mo. Of course, he didn't take it to heart. If one or two words can make the other party let down his guard, or even really call him a brother, then Chen Mo will still suspect whether the other party has bad intentions. After all, the mysterious cave mentioned by the other party is Chen Mo's real purpose. The cave that can grow spiritual fruits may have other good things in it. It's okay. If you have spiritual plant seeds in the future, you can sell them to me. You want more? Yi Tingsheng was slightly stunned. I didn't expect that after being cheated once, they would still dare to buy seeds from him. He knew the specialness of the red fruit. He almost got into trouble at the beginning. Otherwise, he wouldn't have set up a stall to sell them. Of course, Yi Tingsheng was happy when he heard it. He took out a bag of seeds directly from the storage ring and spread it on the table. I still have so many here. If you want 50 taels of spiritual sand, I will sell them all to you. Chapter 77, Talking Nonsense. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Mo glanced at it. These seeds were no different from those in his storage ring. They were the spiritual fruits that could awaken a person's golden spiritual roots. However, now that he had the seeds, what he lacked was the means to store and refine them, otherwise he wouldn't have let them lie quietly in the storage space. He shook his head and said, Doesn't Dao Yui know? The fruit rotted, and the seeds were left. Yi Tingsheng laughed, and then put the cloth bag away again. How could he not know? He just wanted to cheat the other party again. I wonder if there is still that mysterious cave. Stop. Before Chen Mo finished speaking, Yi Tingsheng's face changed drastically. At this moment, he wanted to slap himself in the face. Why did he talk too much at that time and had to tell this matter out? Now, if the news spread, he was afraid that he would be in trouble. Sister Hong, let's get a room, you and Xiao don't come up for now. Chen Mo's expression did not change, but from the tone, he no longer had the playful attitude just now, he became serious. Hong Yan is naturally a delicate person. With the word stop, they know that the next words are not what they want to hear. In this business, keeping a tight mouth is also a necessary quality. No matter how curious, they will not inquire about the privacy of customers. Yi Tingxing did not refuse. He vaguely felt that the spiritual plant husband in front of him seemed to be more than just a spiritual plant husband. How could a spiritual plant husband have a storage ring? How could a spiritual plant husband order Hongyan? The two entered the house. Chen Mo closed the door, and took the initiative to say, "Friend Yi, how about cooperation between you and me?" How to cooperate? You are good at taking risks, and I am good at farming. If you can get some special seeds, why not sell them to me? I believe that the mysterious cave you mentioned at the beginning must not only have red fruits, right? That as soon as these words came out, Yi Tingxing smiled bitterly. Forget it, forget it. Since I was too talkative and let the wind out at the beginning, I will tell you. Please speak. Chen Mo suddenly became serious. It seems that the other party has a story. The cave where the red fruit seeds were found is very secret, behind a mountain stream. You said before that it was behind a waterfall. That was a lie. Yi Tingxing answered casually, the cave is very deep and the area is very large. I spent a lot of effort to explore a small area, and those red fruit seeds were found there. In the past 2 years, I also want to go deeper. I finally cleared a path. Guess what I did? Did you encounter a monster? Chen Mo asked back. Yi Tingxing rolled his eyes at him. Then you can still see me? Haha. Chen Mo smiled awkwardly. He estimated that the other party's strength should be stronger than his, but it seems that he is not much stronger, probably only around the 4th or 5th level of qi refining. If you really encounter a monster, it will really be a dead word. Then, about half a year ago, a large number of cultivators blocked the area. Later, I found out that they were spiritual plant husbands recruited by Xian Peak, saying that they were going to explore the secret realm. I thought to myself, was the cave discovered? Later, I watched for a while and found that it was not. But they blocked there, and I couldn't get in again. No, there is no way. Chen Mo frowned when he heard it, and his intuition told him that this matter was not simple. If it is true as the other party said, the cave that produces the mysterious red fruit is near the secret realm and the Immortal Cave, then the two are definitely related. Friend Yi, I am a spiritual plant husband, only responsible for farming. If you have seeds, I can buy them. As for where they come from, I don't care much. Chen Mo acted very calmly. The other party must have a purpose for revealing this news, and at this time, you must not follow his meaning to pick up the conversation. Oh, but I can't get in now. If I can't get in, I can't get the seeds. Yi Tingxing was a little annoyed. He originally wanted to drag the other party into the water, but this kid actually pulled away at the first time. If it were someone else, knowing another cave related to the Immortal Cave, he would definitely be excited and would definitely ask him to tell the exact location of the cave. Even spending a lot of spiritual sand would be worth it. But the spiritual plant husband in front of him was not only not interested, but also distanced himself from it. He said that he didn't want to know at all. In this way, his calculations could only be in vain. I'm not in a hurry. I can wait for a year or two. As long as you have it, you can come to me at any time. I will definitely pay a high price for it. After saying that, Chen Mo stood up and left directly. It was not until he left the Wenxiang pavilion that he sneered. Whether the other party said those words true or false, their purpose was only one to lure him into the trap. Secret realm, Immortal Cave. That is something that even the head of Xian Peak covets. Any cultivator who hears about it will be tempted. Once the seed of desire sprouts, it is easy to be controlled by it, and if it is allowed to grow, it will eventually be destroyed. So many fraudsters in the past took advantage of this point. As a person who does not answer unfamiliar numbers, naturally he will not listen to what the other party says. The mysterious cave exists, but it is definitely not near the secret realm. Otherwise, how could the head of Xian Peak not know about the place that Tingshan could find? In this way, Chen Mo labeled the other party, full of nonsense, not a single word of truth. The trip to the market came to an end. A few episodes did not affect Chen Mo's farming and breeding plan. He returned home and waited for a few days. On the third day, Wei Wuwei led a large group of people to the door. They were pushing a small cart, which was filled with axes, carving knives, hemp rope and other tools. At first glance, it was not as simple as building a fence. As soon as we met, Wei Wuwei seemed very enthusiastic. Chen Daoyu, I specially found a team for you. Don't you want to build a chicken shed? How about this, I will help you build both a chicken shed and a pig house. A place to live. If it's too small, I'll help you tear it down and build a bigger one. Good guy, here comes the door-to-door business. With no crops to harvest, I came up with the idea of doing this, but how much money can I make from this? Chen Mo didn't know that for a businessman like Wei Wuwei, he would get in as long as there was profit, no matter how much or how little. How much spiritual sand does it take to build a chicken shed? If you give me 10 tails, it can accommodate 200 spiritual birds. How about we build you a pig shed, a sheepfold, and a cow shed, so that you can count on a total of 50 tails of spiritual sand, 0.50. What a dark heart. I don't want to raise other spiritual birds yet. If you don't support it now, you can make preparations. With your talent, you will get involved sooner or later. I'll trouble you again then. Do you know how much effort it took me to gather this team? But Chen Mo didn't want to be fooled. If you can't use it, what do you do with it? Wei Wuwei thought for a moment and said, how about this? You give me 60 taels of spiritual sand and I let them build you a chicken shed and expand the wooden house. How about that? Does the defensive array count? Chapter 78 Wang Lixia's Relics. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is the defense array included? That this is what Chen Mo cares about most. Of course. Chen Mo looked at the other party, his expression seemed to be hesitant, but he cursed the other party in his heart. 60 taels is not too much, not too little, just the amount left after selling grain 2 days ago. It is obvious that the other party wants to squeeze him dry. Rebuilding a wooden house or building a chicken shed, these things can be done by craftsmen in the secular world, and it probably won't cost much money in total, but now. In other words, a joint defense array actually requires 60 taels of spiritual sand, which is simply too expensive. Cut it in half. This. Shopkeeper Wei, the 60 taels of spiritual sand left over from the previous 2 days bought 12 bigger pills, plus I have to practice. Do you think you can give me a discount? That he can't be a sucker at this time. At this time, the other party was obviously a little unhappy. Discount. Tell me, how much spiritual sand is there? Chen Mo took the sachet from his arms, which contained 30 taels of spiritual sand, that's all. 40 taels, no less. Then forget it. Chen Mo spread his hands with a helpless expression. After the two of them tugged, Wei Wuwei finally compromised and took over the wooden house renovation plan for 30 taels of spiritual sand. It's just like falling in love. Whoever needs this spiritual sand more is more likely to compromise. Chen Mo doesn't care, at most he can raise a few fewer chickens. The two sides discussed it and finally decided to rebuild on the original site of Chen Mo's wooden house. Now, 2 choices are in front of him, either live in the market or live in other wooden houses. In theory, Wei Wuwei would think that the other party would choose the former, but he didn't expect that the other party chose to live in other wooden houses. The wooden house is very close to the original address, almost across the field. After opening the permissions, Chen Mo finally opened the door that he often knocked on a few years ago. That's right. This house was originally Wang Lixia's residence. This old monk was the first spiritual plant husband who lent him a hand after he came here. In the end, he died in the Immortal Cave in order to choose to continue his life. Entering the house, just like his room, the house was bare. However, compared with Chen Mo's casual and simple, the other party's house has more life. On the wooden bed facing the door, the original red mattress has turned white, and the kettle on the table has also rusted. Along the corner, there are 3 flower pots. And the plants in the flower pots have completely withered. As early as 3 years ago, Chen Mo secretly promised the other party to build a tomb for her, but after the other party's spiritual field belonged to Xiao Zhanghua, this idea could only be shelved. Now, he finally entered this room. He plans to fulfill his original wish. Although Wang Lixia is old, she lives in an orderly manner and is a person who loves life. Chen Mo put several green Taoist robes hanging on the wall on the bed, and took out her other clothes from the wooden frame at the head of the bed, and then wrapped them up with bedding. Just as he was about to put the package into the storage ring, suddenly an exquisite jade box about half a foot square fell out. "What is this?" Chen Mo was a little surprised, but he couldn't suppress his curiosity and put the jade box on the table. After thinking for a moment, he chose to open it. Suddenly, a crystal light flashed inside. Jewelry. Bracelets, necklaces, pendants, etc. Chen Mo recognized these as jewelry from the secular world at a glance. Seeing these, he couldn't help but smile. No matter how old a person is, who hasn't been young? The moment he closed the lid, he vaguely saw that there was still paper at the bottom of the jade box, and he heard a pop sound, and it opened again. Reaching out to take it, he found an ancient book under a box of jewelry. With a rustling sound, Chen Mo took it out. The ancient book was only half a finger thick, the cover had completely turned yellow, and there was a musty smell. Opening the cover, the 3 words, Wang Lixia, were written in a beautiful font on the title page. Chen Mo flipped through it casually, and it was not the secret book of skills and spells he expected. It was all about Wang Lixia's experience in farming and practicing over the years. After a quick glance, there was not much useful information in it. However, there was an article that attracted her attention. Insect plague. The insect plague is actually a conspiracy. It is Xian Peak. Oh. No, it is a conspiracy of Qinyang's sect to control Lingzifu. According to observation, the so-called Great Disaster every 10 years swept the entire Qinyang sect. According to the time inference, Chen Mo frowned more and more as he read. Wang Lixia speculated that the so-called insect plague was not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. She has observed for many years. Although 10 is an overview, it is not without traces. These drunken aphids will sweep the entire first-level spiritual field of Qinyang's sect within 10 years, and 10 years will be a cycle, repeating over and over again. Of course, Wang Lixia would never tell anyone about such speculation. She knew very well that once it was spread, she would inevitably suffer a fatal disaster. So, she could only write it in the farming experience. After reading it, Chen Mo sighed. Perhaps this is the most helpless thing for her. She knew that the insect disaster was a man-made disaster and understood that this was a conspiracy of Qinyang's sect to control the spiritual plant husband, but for the sake of livelihood, she could only work in the wilderness year after year. Conspiracy. Chen Mo smiled self-deprecatingly. Even if he knew it was a conspiracy, what could he do? In addition to trying his best to protect himself from the insect plague, could he go to those great foundation-building masters and fight to the death? He sighed, and like Wang Lixia at the beginning, he buried this secret in his heart. Then he put the jade box and the cloth bag together, ready to bury them together in the tomb. Chen Mo walked out of the door and came to the woods on the way to the market. This place was primitive and the land had not been cultivated, but it might be because of the lack of spiritual veins. He found a secluded place, dug a huge pit, buried all the things Wang Lixia used during her lifetime, and then cut a wooden sign, used cinnabar as ink, and wrote, "Tomb of my good friend Wang Lixia," no signature. Chen Mo knew that dust would eventually return to dust and earth would return to earth. Unless you live forever, death and disappearance are the final destination of everyone. After fulfilling his wish, Chen Mo suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. He returned to the house and took the 4 spiritual chickens from the field before dark. He only took a cushion and began to meditate. Realm and immortality are the lifelong pursuits of practitioners. The next day, Chen Mo's cabin was demolished. A group of craftsmen who came from nowhere were busy with felling and laying bricks. Even though it was winter now, they still persisted in the cold. They moved very quickly. In less than a month, a brick and wood structure house that was 3 or 4 times larger than the previous one rose from the ground. Chapter 79, Expanding the Scale of Breeding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was already freezing cold when the 12th lunar month came. During this period, He Jiping often came over intentionally or unintentionally, and occasionally wanted to say hello to Chen Mo, but he was scared by his cold face and dared not say a word. After all, the two had had a holiday before. However, now He Jiping dared not to do it even if he had the courage. As for Lan Ling, she also came over frequently, and sometimes even pointed fingers at the construction workers, telling them how to do this and that, as if the house was hers. Chen Mo felt that this female cultivator seemed to be possessed by a demon. It can be said that he had nothing to do with the other party, but the other party was always persistent. However, Chen Mo could only ignore her and let her go. He couldn't kill her, right? Before the beginning of the first lunar month, Chen Mo finally moved into the newly built house, a house that was at least 3 times larger than the original one. The original cabin, the living room, study, practice room, and bedroom were all gathered together. In other words, there was only a palm-sized place. Even Xiao Kang couldn't run if he wanted to. Now, the living room is right at the entrance, and behind the screen are 2 bedrooms, a study, a kitchen, and a practice room. Even the furniture inside was arranged properly by the team of craftsmen that Wei Wuwei found. Chen Mo added some firewood to the fireplace on the side, and gradually the temperature in the room rose. He sat at the 8 immortal table, poured himself a cup of hot tea, and tasted it. Now that I think about it, the 30 taels of spiritual sand are worth it. If there were no such people, it would take a lot of effort just to purchase these furniture, not to mention the defense array covering the house and the chicken coop. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Who? Me. Chen Mo frowned when he heard it. Her again. Chen Mo didn't know what Lan Ling was going to do. You can't lick like this. No one is inside. Fellow Taoist Chen, you are moving to a new house today. I specially cooked some spiritual rice for you. Do you want it? Without listening to the other party's words, Chen Mo put down the cup and went into the practice room to meditate and practice. He didn't want to listen to the other party's nagging. It's okay to be good-looking, but you are also average. Outside the door, Lan Ling was still muttering. The cold wind was biting. Even as a cultivator, it was a bit unbearable at this moment. She kept muttering for a long time, and when she saw that Chen Mo never responded, her eyes were very disappointed. The spiritual rice in her hand was completely cold, but even so, she was reluctant to eat a bite. Where the golden city goes, the gold and stone will open. Lan Ling, you must believe that you can do it. That she encouraged herself and went back. A month later, it was approaching the beginning of spring, and there was less than half a month before sowing. Chen Mo, who had been in seclusion, finally survived the cold winter and walked out of the house. Now, living in a luxury house, his quality of life has obviously risen to a higher level. He drinks tea, eats, and occasionally reads books to learn about the local customs. Even if he stays at home, as long as he has liver, it's fine. Originally, Chen Mo planned to stay for about 10 days before considering turning the fields, but he couldn't stand Xiao Kang pecking at his window with his beak every day at the door. If he didn't let it in, it would keep pecking. If he let it in, it would keep clucking in his ear. Finally, Chen Mo, who was not tired of it, finally decided to go to the market to buy a hen for Xiao Kang. Cluck. 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 Before leaving, Xiao Kang was still muttering in his ear, as if he wanted Chen Mo to take it with him so that he could choose it himself. Do you think we are going to visit a brothel? If I really take you there, be careful not to get your kidneys choked. That with Xiao Kang's current power, I'm afraid he will be targeted as soon as he enters the breeding station. At that time, the cultivators of Xian Peak want to eat it. Should I give it to them or not? Finally, after Chen Mo's comfort, 10 little hens, Xiao Kang reluctantly agreed to stay at home and not go anywhere. It took less than half an hour to arrive at the market. Chen Mo made a special trip to the number 123 grain station, and the gate was still posted, temporarily closed due to important matters. It seems that Song Yinshi will not be back for a while. When I came to the spiritual bird breeding station, the smell of chicken manure was still everywhere. After walking in for a while, I finally stopped in front of the stall where I bought Xiao Kang last time. Boss, do you have hens for sale? Yes, 6 taels each. Isn't it 5 taels? That's a male, After some communication, Chen Mo understood, at the beginning, when the general spiritual breeding officials came to buy spiritual birds, they would default to males, and the price would naturally be the lowest price, unless you take the initiative to ask. No matter where or what species, females are more expensive than males, after all, they can reproduce. Then 10 hens and 10 roosters. The shop owner took a large cage, put it on the ground, and then began to catch chicks from his cage. After catching it, he very skillfully opened its buttocks to take a look, and then stuffed it in. In a short while, all 20 chicks were packed. Do you have any more bran? 2 taels for 100 caddies. The other party remained expressionless, and doing business was no fun for him. Give me 500 caddies too. Originally, Chen Mo wanted to ask if there were any insects for sale, but when he thought about the price, he gave up. Chen Mo paid 120 taels of spiritual sand. So far, he has spent most of the 300 taels of spiritual sand that he harvested at the end of the year, and the rest needs to be bought for the fasting pills and so on. Spending money like water. These 20 chicks will double in 2 years, and if they lay eggs, there will be extra income. In other words, there are dozens of taels of spiritual sand a year, which is hundreds of kilograms when converted into spiritual rice. According to 70 kilograms per mu of land, at least 10 mu can be compared with it. However, breeding is different from planting. It makes more money, but the risk is also greater. If these chicks die halfway, then they will lose all their money. That's why there is the saying of our ancestors, a man with a lot of money doesn't count if he has hair. Of course, according to Chen Mo's understanding, like the breeders among the spiritual plant husbands, there is also a special profession among the spiritual raising officials, veterinarians. Specialized in treating spiritual birds and beasts, the status is much higher than that of breeders. An excellent veterinarian is the object of competition and pursuit, not to mention the market. Even in Xian Peak, nowadays, who among the cultivators with a little status doesn't have a spiritual pet? If there is a disease or disaster, the only one you can rely on is the veterinarian. Chen Mo also wants to develop in that direction, but at present, it seems that there is no clue. Like the spiritual array master, the veterinarian also has to learn from a master. Wrap the cage tightly with a quilt. The wind in early spring is still very biting. Although the chicks in the cage are spiritual birds, they are still small after all and can't withstand the cold wind. He pushed the cart all the way with the spirit snake body movement and finally returned home before noon. Chen Mo just opened the cage. A shadow came in an instant, but the next moment, Xiao Kang was dumbfounded. Crack! Cluck! Cluck! Why are there only chicks? Hens! Where are the hens? Chapter 80 Black-Winged Bird. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Isn't the plan to raise a little chick good? Chen Mo took Xiao Kang out of the chicken coop and carried the newly arrived chicken coop back to his house. Compared to the freezing cold outside, the scene here was completely different. He sat on a round stool, opened the cage from above, and regardless of gender, he randomly took one out of the cage and put it on his lap, and began to massage the little chick's meridians. Just like Xiao Kang at the beginning, the little chick that was struggling just now became obedient as soon as the spiritual energy penetrated his fingertips. It didn't move, allowing Chen Mo to massage and comb its hair. Cluck! Cluck! Xiao Kang walked around him and the chicken coop quickly. These 20 will be your little brothers in the future. Chen Mo said, and changed to another one. In the future, except for feeding, you will be responsible for everything else. How about it? Cluck! Cluck! You are still sensible, and it's not in vain to raise you for so long. Chen Mo stretched out his hand and patted Xiao Kang who was circling, and said with a smile, it seems that there is no big difficulty in communicating with this spiritual bird, as long as he makes his words clear. The other party seems to understand. From Xiao Kang's successful training of the other 3 spiritual birds, in addition to feeding, daily airing, returning to the shed, etc. can be handed over to it. Originally, I wanted to let it be responsible for feeding, but it is really too greedy. Let Xiao Kang be responsible for feeding. I am afraid that the other chickens will starve to death. Cluck! Cluck! Xiao Kang suddenly stopped and pecked the iron cage with his chicken head, and then pecked the ground. What? Didn't I feed you before I left? It shook its chicken head and nodded to the chickens in the cage. Cluck, cluck. Chen Mo was happy. You said they eat it, not you want to eat it? After speaking, Xiao Kang nodded violently. Why don't I believe it? This chicken has told such lies countless times, but every time Chen Mo feeds other spiritual chickens, it will grab the food that has just been spilled. How can the speed of the other 3 chickens compare with it? When others nod once, it nods continuously like a vibrator. Cluck. Cluck. Xiao Kang looked at Chen Mo sincerely. Brother, believe me, really. Go play on the side. Chen Mo ignored him and combed the feathers of 20 chickens. Then he picked up Xiao Kang's chicken head and gave him a massage. It takes half an hour to comb the feathers of 24 spiritual birds. Although the talent of strong is strong, it is also limited in time like other talents. If you want to continue to expand the scale of breeding, you must sacrifice the time for cultivation and planting, but the good thing is that active art can be upgraded, and the talent, strong, can also be upgraded. Now this spell for massage, which is essential for the Wenxiang Pavilion, has reached the peak of proficiency. It will not take long to master it, and then the talent can make another breakthrough. Eat one bite at a time. Now, Chen Mo's situation is still safe and stable, and the demand for spells is not particularly high. The rest is to wait until the end of this year to break through the 4th level of qi refining before considering it. At that time, you will need to learn about the techniques, puppets, spells, formations, etc. Chen Mo put the 20 new chickens aside, entered the training room, and practiced cross-legged. Since he became a spiritual plant husband and awakened his first talent, he was destined to be a hardworking life. In addition to farming and raising chickens, he practiced. It has been more than half a month. In a flash, the chill of spring has faded, and the breeze is refreshing. The newly purchased spiritual birds are also familiar with this place. Now they are locked in the chicken shed and trained by Xiao Kang. From the size, they are obviously bigger. Chen Mo also picked up the hoe and went to the field to work. On the other hand, He Jiping, Miao Chen and others finally survived this winter. They relied on the seeds bought on credit from the Niu family shop to barely start the planting of the new year. Even for those who were at the 2nd level of qi refining, a plague of insects almost made them unable to recover and have a shortage of food, not to mention the other spiritual plant husbands at the 1st level of qi refining. Fellow Taoist, do you think the 123rd grain station ran away? Earlier, the 2 had gone to the market, and the grain store that cheated them of spiritual sand was still closed. Combined with the seeds, Miao Chen speculated that the shopkeeper of this store was afraid that the spiritual plant husband would come to make trouble, so he ran away. However, He Jiping rolled his eyes at him. Run away? Will he be afraid of us? That's right. After that, the 2 of them each carried a hoe and went to work in the fields. Lan Ling slowly walked out of the wooden house. Her skin, which was originally as delicate as a baby's, looked a little sallow, and her entire eye sockets began to become sunken. Her mental state was obviously much worse. Her fasting pills were used up. She hadn't eaten for nearly a month. The bowl of spiritual rice she picked up from the field was her last food, and she had eaten it all more than half a month ago. Lan Ling also went to the market yesterday, and wanted to buy some seeds on credit to plant for another year, but the manager of the Niu family shop refused her when he saw her like this. It was obvious that she didn't even have the qigong pills, and it was very likely that she would not be able to get the seeds back if she lent them to her. Lan Ling came to Chen Mo's field tremblingly. These days, she would knock on the other party's door every now and then, but there was no response at all. Chen, fellow Taoist Chen, can I borrow a few bigu pills from you? I'll give you everything. When the other party walked towards this side, Chen Mo found her, but he didn't even raise his head, but dug the ground by himself. Lan Ling followed closely behind, muttering, "Help me, I shouldn't have listened to He Jiping, shouldn't. Don't bother me. Everyone has his own destiny, why should he lend a hand to the disaster caused by Qingyang sect?" For Chen Mo, if a spiritual plant husband like Lan Ling didn't survive the past few years and had no risk resistance, it would be difficult for him to make a breakthrough in the end. When, you also borrowed bigu pills from Wang Lixia. After saying this, Chen Mo suddenly stopped. He turned to look at the other party, and asked coldly, I can pay it back and take care of the spiritual field for her, what about you? I can do it too. You can do it too. 2 acres of spiritual field, excluding taxes and rent, you still have less than 200 kilograms of grain, 24 big pills in 2 years, how to make up the gap? I can take over another acre. Heh. Chen Mo sneered and continued to dig the ground. Behind him, Lan Ling followed closely, her upper and lower lips trembling constantly, as if she had something to say, but she was struggling whether she should say it. She was afraid that if she said it, her life would be in danger. But this sentence might be the only way for her to get the big pill. Finally, after a psychological struggle, she still spoke. More than 4 years ago, I saw the black-winged crow.